This is WPSL Port St. Lucie.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL, but you're encouraged to like and share them on Facebook. Howard Insurance in Port St. Lucie now presents the African American Scene with Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always good to be with you here on a Wednesday night. Oh goodness, we had the Oscars on Sunday. We got Cohen testifying today.
Oh.
And I hate to admit, I listened to a lot of it. I was working and I had it on Yahoo, and I was listening to quite a bit of it. So this is the last Wednesday in February for African American History Month, and I have kind of made a promise to myself that I'm going to try to do at least something once a month regarding African American history. It doesn't just seem right to limit it to just 1 month every
Absolutely.
year. Yeah.
Why not? Because you know what? They only gave you a month because it's not enough time.
No.
And February is what? The shortest month of the year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So we will endeavor. And listen, if there's anything, here's what I would really like. If there's anything in particular you would like to learn or have me put on my professor's hat and teach you, call me or email me or Facebook me and say, I'd like for you to talk about this, or I'd like for you to talk about that. And I promise you I will go out and I'll do the work and make that a subject on my show. Now, let me tell you, best picture of the year for the Oscars was Green Book. Now, I'm going to venture to guess, because I tested it, how many people knew what the Green Book is or was? Look, Cliff's giving me that look.
Well, I know what the Green Mile was about.
Yeah, no, the
That's
Green
different,
Book.
though. This is the Green Book.
The Green Book. Now, Renee Arteaga, if he's listening, he knows what it is. I know.
Okay.
So let me tell you, because I think it's very interesting. As a kid growing up, I'm a senior citizen now, and when growing up in Philadelphia, we had family in Atlanta, and whenever we used to go once every other year, and my dad had this pretty 1960 Chevy Impala with the wings on it, and we'd go down to Atlanta. Well, whenever we would take a road trip like that, and then we had family in Connecticut, so sometime we'd go there. Whenever we take a road trip like that, my mother had this red plaid picnic basket, and my sister and I, she's probably smiling right now because she'll remember that basket. And
I remember seeing baskets like that.
Yeah, and my mother would pack that basket up with all kind of goodies. She'd fry some chicken, and she'd have some desserts and goodies in there. And so whenever we would go on a trip, boy, my sister and I would really look forward to the trip because we always had that picnic basket full of stuff.
Ah.
But I didn't know why they did that.
Oh.
I didn't understand that till I was a grown man. Now, thus the reason why the Green Book. The Green Book was created because under Jim Crow, it was very dangerous when you were on the road, especially if you had a nice car, to stop at various places to get gas or to sleep. So my mom and dad would never told us why until I was grown. But they packed up the basket because they didn't want to stop. Or if they stopped, it was only going to be a brief second.
At a Green Book location, no doubt.
Well, yes. I don't know if they had one. I assume they did. But because, the Green Book actually was started in New York.
Ooh.
By a mailman. This post office guy, he created the Green Book around 1930. And he did so because of what I'm telling you about places to stop. So the movie is a honest portrayal of something that was going on there. And you will recall that the pianist, Greg said his name earlier, was at the one place where he was hired to perform, and they wouldn't let him go to the bathroom. So now, I was in this article that I read, they said that there are several organizations trying to rehabilitate some of the facilities that were on the Green Book Trail. But the Green Book Trail, and it was not just in the South, it was in the North. It actually started in New York. And then they would highlight these places. So if you were an African American and you were going to travel, you could get the Green Book, and it would tell you where you could stay. Now that may sound strange to you, but if you were a middle-class black person, like my mom and dad, and he drove a nice car, that was an alarm bell that could get you in a lot of trouble. Now, in the case where he had me and my sister and my mother in the car, they probably gave him a pass because it was a family thing. But that would get you in trouble. So, wow, you just went to Professor Rudy's class and you learned all about the Green Book.
Folks just probably can't imagine what it's like to have every move you make so scrutinized.
Well, listen.
It's like, there's black people coming into town. They're at the red light.
Oh,
they turn green. And the play-by-play going on. And if you move the wrong way or drink from the wrong fountain.
Oh, yeah.
And folks, there's no exaggeration to this. I can see that this is clearly stuff like this has taken place.
Oh, listen.
And somebody needs to still be ashamed about it, of course.
Oh, well, yeah, but see, this is what they want to tell you all the time. There is no problem anymore. Now, let me give you the part 2 of this. The sundown towns. Have you ever heard of sundown towns?
Sundown towns. Towns you don't want to be in after sundown?
If you were a black person,
ooh,
you better not get caught in that town after sundown. Now, in several communities,
isn't it nice to be able to freely speak this out nowadays? I mean, could you imagine trying to go on the radio back then?
They would have been ready. They would have standing outside ready to lynch me for even admitting that it exists.
I wouldn't say that I don't think a few old guys aren't still like that now.
Well, here's the number one thing that my callers or my listeners are doing right now. Oh, God, why does he have to tell us this? Why do we have to know that? Why won't they just make pretend like none of this exists? Because, daggone it, you need to know that it exists.
Shout it from the housetops until somebody steps forward and apologizes.
Yeah. Now, let me give you the news about the sundown towns.
Okay.
What they would do with the sundown towns is they would move the black population out of that little town or village so that it was all white. Okay? So and then once it became white, there was an unwritten agreement that there would not be any non-whites allowed in that town.
Wow.
And we still have that to this day.
Actually, we have strong evidence of it that I can point it out. Give me a map. I'll show you a map. Do you know? Okay, you see this little canal that runs alongside of the radio station out there?
Yeah.
Well, when it makes a left and goes east up about North 39th Street, it becomes Moores Creek. Do you know what Moores Creek once stood for? It was a barrier line that people from one side of it weren't allowed to go to the other side of it. Do you remember that?
That's true. I wasn't here, but
I wasn't here either, but I heard about it.
I was trying to verify over the last couple days, and I couldn't verify it, that Fort Pierce used to be a sundown town.
Absolutely. And in the southern part of Fort Pierce, where actually Orange Avenue is the street line mark.
Yes, it was.
But the Canal Street and that Moores Creek Canal, I had friends that lived on the very end of 15th Street. And I'm always looking for squirrels and snakes and stuff. When I was a kid, I liked to catch lizards. And I'm out there, I'm playing with my friends over there, and I go over to the thick brush along the side of the canal, and I start to go into it, and they're all saying, "Don't go in there, they'll come get you, don't go in there." Well, why? What's wrong? White folks ain't allowed over that canal in there. You get in trouble. I said, really? And of course, I was a dummy. I was raised up north, never seen my first black person until 7th grade down here in Fort Pierce, as a matter of fact.
Right.
You know, and so I'm learning. This is all new to me. Like, oh my gosh, was it that bad? And then I started realizing that all the streets north of Orange Avenue are only lettered names: Avenue A, Avenue B, Avenue C. Orange Avenue to the south, though, it's Atlantic, Boston, Citrus, Delaware, Easter, Florida. It's all alphabetical with names. To the north, it's just the letters.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And when you drive through the northern part of Fort Pierce today, and you see the new street signs the city put up, the Lincoln Park neighborhood signs, the street signs, and when you see that, it tells you right there, hey, why are those signs different? Well, it's kind of representative of a different part of town that was actually almost like a totally different town up until.
That's exactly right. And you know what? There's people listening to this show right now going, I had no idea.
I'll bet you they didn't know.
Just like now this died pretty quickly, but when they reopened the Sunrise, that was a really emotional thing because many of the black people in this community were not allowed to go to the Sunrise Theater.
Wow.
So when they were opening the Sunrise, there was a large protest of African Americans that want to make sure that there was people of color that was working in the Sunrise, and then some were just not going to go in there because of the memories they had from when they were a kid.
You know what else I heard? The Navy SEAL Museum. Those guys out there tell you a story that the Sunrise Theater, yes, the Sunrise Theater, they captured German enemy soldiers in the area, and they had Sunrise Theater tickets in their pockets so the enemies get in. They wouldn't let their neighbors.
That's right.
Wow, what a hypocritic society we've had over time. And
It's
getting, but I hope it's getting better.
Well, listen, the research I did on sundown towns is there are still sundown towns.
Wow.
And it exists primarily in the suburbs. Okay. Suburbs are the little enclaves outside the major cities. One of the places that is notorious for having sundown towns, believe it or not, is Illinois. Illinois is known to have a lot of sundown towns.
Wow.
Where there's very little or no black residents within those areas.
Residents, okay.
Yeah.
Even today then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you stick out like a sore thumb. Now, I will tell you, when I got transferred from from North Carolina to New York, I had to spend about 2 months in northern Jersey. And I'll tell you, the part of northern Jersey where I was at, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. I didn't see a black person for 3 weeks. Then I was there, and I certainly couldn't find any place to get a haircut. So
Loneliness set in.
yeah, it was
Wow.
it was a little. And now remember, now I graduated from high school in South Jersey, but this was North Jersey. So, but yeah, they still exist. Now, the reason why I want you to know this is not because I want to whine. I want you to understand there's still some inequities that exist amongst us that need to be dealt with.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sure there's some people that are still involved in some of those types of mentalities and
Oh yeah,
things that need to hear this message.
yeah, and I want you, my white brothers and sisters, to stand up and say, no, that's not right. I don't like that. That's what I need for you to do, to just stand up and say, you find that objectionable, because it's still going on, folks. Sundown towns, you would think in 2019.
If it's still going on, then somebody is not paying due diligence.
Well, what happens is, and we talked about this probably a year ago, people get into their enclaves, which is why we have become so tribal with our politics. People get into their little enclave, and it's my enclave, and this is where I'm at, and this is where I want to be. Everybody looks like me and thinks like me, and I'm happy with that. Okay. It's all right for other people to think like you, but why does everybody have to look like you in order for you to be satisfied? Because in the end of the day, and we've talked about this more often than I could think about, is that I want the same thing you want. I want the exact same thing you want.
And I'll bet we have even more in common than that.
Yes, we do, yeah. But we're going to take a little break here. And if you want to call up and listen, I can't do this to you on a day when Cohen's been on talking all day. I know some of you are probably pent up with opinions about what Cohen's having to say. So if you want to call up and talk about it, I'm willing to give you a forum. That phone number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590.
Well, the man is willing to hand his microphone to you, friends. 340-1590. You're listening to the African American Scene with Rudy Howard. This is the last Wednesday of Black History Month, February 2019. Now back to the African American Scene with Rudy Howard.
So listen, if you haven't seen Green Book, I really encourage you to see it. It's a very nice story, and it comes to a very meaningful conclusion by allowing two people from different walks of life to experience each other. And they found out that they liked each other, which is kind of interesting. So I think you would really enjoy it. And I think the Academy Award was justified. I think Viggo Mortensen was fantastic. Mashallah Ali was also very good. So, all right. I've educated you now about sundown towns, and I've told you about the Green Book. How many people out there knew about the Green Book before I told you tonight? Wow. If you knew about it, call. Give me a call, 340-1590. Carol may have known.
Jay might.
Jay, I'm sure Jay knows. Yeah. Jay and Carol probably know, but I'm not sure the rest of my listeners would have been aware of the Green Book. But just imagine that now. You needed a guide.
Where it's okay for black people to go, right?
Yes, a guide that would tell you where it was okay for black people to go.
I'm not laughing at this. What I'm laughing at is that I'm trying to imagine some of these millennial kids that don't believe any of this ever happened.
I know.
They can't fathom it here in the USA.
I know. My son's probably one of them. If he was listening to this right now, he'd go,
Huh?
Dad, come on.
You're kidding a bit.
You got to be kidding me. You know, that this really happened. Although I think as he's getting older, he's had a couple of incidents that's kind of opened his eyes a little bit. But for the most part, now my son that's not his thing.
Well, he has grown up in a much, much, much different society than you did here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll bet you're thankful for that.
Well, yeah, but you know what? When I got to high school and we moved from Philadelphia to Willingboro, I was in a very similar environment to Port St. Lucie. The only difference was that was in 1965. So in 1965, it was not a relatively common thing for a black guy to be going out with a white girl. Yeah, that was pretty rare for that to happen. So while I grew up in a suburban community that was mostly white, there was a different aura that existed at that time. Now you fast forward to 2019, it's a whole different kind of situation that exists today versus back there in 1965.
And
that's
in a
for sure.
politically correct world, we should be allowed to talk about it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
And we got Frank on line one. Yes, sir.
Hello, Rudy. How are you doing?
Good.
Okay, I've been listening, and I got struck by something that Cliff just said. I think he just made the comment of the evening, and I want to just repeat it. He says, you were mentioning how your son would not be all into the history of the no-go town part of the town and that kind of thing. But Cliff said, your son has been raised in a different environment. Aren't you thankful for that? And I'd like your comment.
In a way, yes, and in a way, no. Now I know that sounds like a strange answer.
No, I'm waiting to hear the no.
Okay, I'm going to tell you why. In a way, yes, because he has the values that he was raised with by me and his mother, that we are open to all kinds of people. But in a way, no, because when he runs up against that rare person that's going to be discriminatory against him, it's going to hit him a lot harder than it hit me, because I was mentally prepared for it, and I don't think that he's totally prepared for that mentally.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Half yes and half no. The yes part is it makes sense because he's not exposed to it as much, but the no part is for the same reason. Since he's not exposed to it very much, it's going to sound odd and unnatural.
It isn't if he's exposed to it today.
By 90% of the populace nowadays.
What'd you say now?
Today,
the children today of all colors are accepted by 90% of the populace.
okay, so if they do run into this kind of a problem from somebody who's of the old school, so to speak, it's a watered-down version of what Rudy experienced, right?
Well,
it's just not
only watered down, but it's less frequent. He's not, it might happen once in a year,
okay,
or once in 5 years. Whereas to Rudy, probably happened to him every day.
Well, I'm not going to say every day, but it certainly happened with some regularity. But I'm going to say this to you.
Okay.
I would have probably agreed with what you just said until I saw Charlottesville. When I saw Charlottesville, I was blown away by how many young white guys was in that group marching as white supremacists. I was absolutely freaked out by that. I would expected most of those guys be long gray beards and some of them with walkers, and it wasn't. There was a lot of young white kids out there in that movement, and I was really blown away with that.
Okay.
You disagree with me?
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, I think your comment that you're making right now indicates there's a different mood today. Back in the day, and that is in both our teenage years, because I'm 65 years old.
Okay, you and I are right there together.
Yeah, we're all up there.
We're right there together. I know all this stuff. But now it's different. Over the past 10 to 20 years, you have the parts of town where you can't go in, except now, me as a white person, I would be suspect of mental deficiency. Let's do this. My kids both went and graduated from Lincoln Park
Okay.
Academy. And I first heard about the Avenue D Challenge in 2010 when my son was there as a freshman. You know the Avenue D Challenge, right?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, he told me what it was. He says, walk down Avenue D at night from one end to the other.
Oh, yeah?
Well, I've done it. And
Okay, God bless you.
But
I bet you I wouldn't be able to make it.
now, if I wasn't like 6 foot tall and looked like a monster that come out of the swamp, if I didn't look like the way I look, I probably wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Frank, let me just say this to you because I often have these discussions about Fort Pierce.
Yeah.
There is no place, I'm going to repeat this again, there is no place in Fort Pierce that I am fearful of. None. Zero. Now,
wish I
are
could say
there, well, I can say that. And now, there are places that I don't want to be at 3 o'clock in the morning, but there's a lot of places in this country I don't want to be at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I would tell you, growing up in the city of Philadelphia, and also having spent time in Brooklyn with my uncle, there was parts of both of those cities. In the daytime, my head was on a swivel, looking in all directions. So, I don't.
I remember that.
Yeah, I don't have the fear of Fort Pierce some people have.
Well, I was there in 1968 when on 8 Mile Road, you had on the southern end you had the blacks, and on the northern end you had the whites, and right down 8 Mile Road went the National Guard, and they aimed in both directions. Anybody that crosses that line gets shot, no questions asked. Back in 1968. I remember that.
All right, Frank. Well, thank you. We got another caller, Frank, but thank you. And we got Greg on line 2. Yes, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes.
Hey.
Pardon me. I knew of the Green Book.
Okay.
My parents told me about it when I was probably in middle school.
Wow.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area before I transferred out here. And my parents, my mother was from Oklahoma, and my father from San Diego through Missouri, and they knew quite well of the Green Book themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the article that I read, they were saying there's several locations in San Francisco and I think in Oklahoma that were Green Book stops.
Yep. I noticed, I've been here 13 years now. And I noticed when I first came out, one of the messages that I sent back home to my family and friends remaining in the Bay Area was that the South is still alive down here, because I noticed some questionable attitudes and stuff. But then friends of mine here in the Southeast Florida area have let me know that, oh no, man, now it's mild compared to what it used to be like. And I couldn't imagine that. I could not imagine being a black person and living in that kind of atmosphere.
Yeah.
The Twilight Zone was real.
Are you kidding me?
It was real.
Then to think that you've got to have special restaurants and hotels that you can stop at when you're traveling.
Bathrooms and water fountains. And
oh, my God.
Bring the picnic basket
now,
along,
Greg,
you don't want to stop.
weren't you shocked when your mom and dad told you about that?
Yes, absolutely. I was 12 or 13 years old, and I was shocked then.
Yeah, yeah.
We were raised that, a person's ethnicity did not matter one bit.
Same with me.
Not one bit. And I thought to myself, and I remember thinking about this when Mom and Dad explained it to me, I said, why would people do that to other people back then, thinking as a 13-year-old, Nowadays, I know more of what the actuality of and the reality of things was at that time. But I was very puzzled about it as a young man, and it blew me away when this movie came out. And when I started reading about the movie a year and a half ago, I said, this is going to be a fantastic movie. And it was.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it was. Thank you so much for calling. We got another caller. Thank you,
You're
Greg.
welcome.
And we got Terry on line 1. Yes, Terry.
Hi, good evening. Reason for my call is I grew up in Delray Beach in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I was listening to the radio a couple of weeks ago, and I was absolutely amazed to find that the city of Delray Beach was honoring a man, a black gentleman, who in the 50s and 60s got the Atlantic Ocean beaches desegregated so that black children and black people could actually go to the beach and swim.
I think that was on our 5 o'clock news from Channel 5. Yeah, I remember that. Absolutely.
And I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean honoring somebody for doing something like that? Isn't it just natural that anybody could go to the beach? But I guess back in the 50s and 60s, it just wasn't permitted. And even growing up there, I never paid any attention to it.
Yeah.
So here was a gentleman they were honoring to actually have taken the time to force the community to recognize that the Atlantic Ocean was not set aside just for white people.
No.
Terry, is that unbelievable or what?
That is, and I grew up in it and never paid much attention to it.
Well, see, but that's not your fault, Terry, because you know what? Why would you? It's not affecting you. You know, the only way you would pay attention is if you went, how come there's never any black people out here?
Yeah.
But just think about the logic of that too. This is where you really can, when it falls apart. How many germs are you going to get when you're going into the damn ocean?
Not one person, not one white person has ever became a black person by hanging around with them.
Right, exactly.
Well, and not only that, something I didn't know, I married a girl from Delray Beach who grew up in a big house over on the ocean.
Right.
And she brought to my attention after I married her that during that period of time, if any of their housekeepers were to ever stay overnight in their house on the ocean, they had to inform the police department that the housekeeper or the maid or the yard man was going to be staying over because the parents were going out of town, and the police would check in to make sure that everything was okay. If anything past sundown, you had to check in with the police to let them know a black person was going to be staying east of the Intercoastal.
Wow.
And that, to me, was absolutely frightening and amazing.
Well, you just verified what I was talking about earlier about the sundown towns.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't hear that. I was talking earlier that there's sundown towns that existed from actually like the 1890s until 1963, but there's still some sundown towns that exist today where black folks are just not supposed to be out after the sun goes down. Kind of spooky, but good for your girlfriend for being honest.
There is a little cake for that pie.
Yeah.
I mean, so a little ice cream to put on that pie. Because there's a woman in the Palm Beach County area down there. Remember the man with the beach story?
Yeah.
This woman has collected artifacts that they could very easily create a Black History museum in Palm Beach County out of all the stuff this one woman has.
Yeah.
You heard about that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you,
Okay.
Terry. All right.
All right. Because
Good night.
you know
All
who-
right.
Go.
all
Bye.
right.
Okay.
Jay.
And we got Jay.
Yeah, I got there he is. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jay.
Okay, how you doing, Rudy, and your co-host?
Good.
Yeah,
Good, man.
I was thinking I wasn't going to call, but I said let me call because I was just thinking what I did about a year and a half ago, my daughter called me. She's in Tampa, and her and my son-in-law were getting ready to go to North Carolina for her mother-in-law's funeral. And so I told her, I said, Juliet, I said, when you get on 95, plan your trip. It's not like I was going back in the past, because a lot of people think that everything is okay until something happens. Right now, you have to be careful where you go. It's not as, maybe three or 4 years ago it was okay, but right now I notice that I feel a little tense sometimes. I'll drive down, out of the county. I'm somewhere else, and I'll go into a restaurant. Maybe I want to get something to eat, and I notice that I'm the only one in there, and I just feel the eyes people are looking at me, and I'm waiting for somebody to say something. But then I said, let me just, try to relax and not even worry about it. But it's not a good feeling, Rudy. I'm going to tell you, that's not a good feeling to be.
I've been there.
Uncomfortable like that.
I've been there.
Yeah. So anyway, what I told my daughter, I said, what you'll need to do, you and Rick, plan your trip. Make sure you stay on 95, and if you have to get gas or food, there's rest stops right there on 95. Don't drive a half a mile off out of 95 into a little town that you don't know where you're going just to get something to eat or to get gas. Make sure you plan it and stay on 95 until you get down to North Carolina, then do your thing. I said, and she said, I didn't think about that. I said, well, sometimes right now we don't think, but we got to start thinking, and you got to remember you don't want to be, a statistic. Okay, I don't want nothing like that to happen to you, because I don't want to have to come down there and hurt somebody. So I said, just do that for me, okay? And I want you to get there safe and get back home safe. And she said, thanks, Dad. Thanks for, reminding me that. I didn't think about that, but it makes a lot of sense, because there's a lot of stuff going on. I said, yeah, you just got to be careful where you go and where you go get gas and food. But the Green Book, I remember as a kid, because I used to travel back and forth with my mother to Savannah, Georgia from New York. And those things, they used to talk a lot about it. I had about 2 or 3 cousins that played on. There was a Negro League team in Savannah, and they were good. They were excellent players, and they even had the Green Book.
Oh yeah.
Because they traveled all over the place, and they would telling me stories when I was I guess I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
And they used to tell me stories, and and they show me what they had to do. And they said, this is what we have to do when we travel. Certain places we can go, mainly black-owned restaurants or, motels or hotels owned by black folks. And he said that's what we did. And that was the way it was. And it just, a lot of people don't think about it. When white folks talk about, like the guy that was on earlier, it's because he has that privilege. He don't have to worry about that.
Well, yeah.
They can go anywhere they want. They can do anything. They get what they call white privilege. I mean, come on, y'all. Just think about what goes on.
But he was so honest.
I know. It's sad, though. It's very sad that people don't really realize it.
I know, but he was being honest. I can't pick on him, because he said, I wasn't even aware of it. Yeah, why?
Mm-hmm.
But hey,
that's part of the white privilege.
That's what I was saying, and I try to explain that to them. Some people that they'll start. I go over here to the Civic Center, right here in Port St. Lucie. Every day I go to the gym and work out. And you see the same people every day, and we get into discussions, and I explain the different things to them, and they say, I never took it that way. I said, that's because you're not in my skin. You're not African. You're not a person of color. And I said, you've been walking through this life, and you're living, not worrying about too much, and everything is okay as far as you. But we have to, we have a lot of things we have to think about, where we go and how we do it, and the kind of people we deal with, and you have to always be prepared when you're going for a job. You got to be, a little better than the average person, and it shouldn't be that way, but that's just the way, it's the way it's set up, and people have this biases that they don't even know they have.
Yeah.
Right? I guess you ran into that yourself,
sure.
Rudy. Where they
sure.
you talk to them and they're friendly. They talk of sports with you. They talk about everything else. But then things come out and you find out who's who.
Listen, I'll tell you, I've got probably 3 or 4 of these, but I'll give you my classic. Mm-hmm. I was in New York, and Headhunter got in touch with me. Zurich was looking for a manager down in the Baltimore area. Well, I had moved to New York. I had been in Columbia, Maryland, and then went to North Carolina, and then I was in New York. And I missed Columbia, so I was prepared to go back to Baltimore for the job. So I talked to the guy for 45 minutes on the phone, He says, man, you are exactly what I've been looking for. I'm going to send you a train ticket because, I can catch a train right from New York going right down to Baltimore. And he said, let's come down to Baltimore and we'll finalize the terms. I said, okay. So I get on the train. I call my buddies. I still got all my frat brothers down there in Columbia, and I have them pick me up from the train station. And one of my buddies let me have his car to drive around. I show up at the office. So the secretary comes out and she goes, are you Rudolph Howard? Now, of course, Rudolph Howard don't sound nothing like a black name at all. So I go in, and the guy looks at me and he says, I don't think you'll be happy here. I said, what? He said, I just don't think you'll be happy here.
Bet you he would be the one that's not happy.
I said, are you kidding me? You sent me a train ticket? You paid for my fare to come down here to finalize the terms, and you're telling me that you don't think I'll be happy here? He says, no, I just don't think this is the right place for you. I thought to myself, well, I'll be damned. And I don't need to spell it out. I mean, you know what happened.
Oh, yeah.
He took the name, and he heard me talk on the phone, and he was not able to put that together that I was a black guy. So
much to his surprise.
Well, and let me tell you something. He looked like he saw a ghost. When I walked through that door, and his secretary said, this is Mr. Howard, he looked like he had seen a ghost. I said, oh, boy, I could sense it right away. But anyway, Jay, I got another caller.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a nice evening now.
Okay,
All
all
right,
righty. Winnie, how are you, my friend?
All right, how y'all doing? That was funny.
Lively
Yeah.
show tonight.
Anyway, Dad, I know you were saying something about that area, suburban area. Say a black guy, he was dating a white lady back in the days. What part of the state that was at?
Well,
that you were talking about. What part of the United States that was at?
was
Was up north?
Yeah,
north?
yeah. Where I lived
What part up north?
Well, I lived in South Jersey in a place called Willingboro, which is like exit 5 on the turnpike.
Also, black guy could date white lady back then?
Well, let me put it to you like this. At that time, there was maybe one every now and then. I was absolutely not going to deal with that at that point. I was young, and I didn't want to do it.
I know, because I heard down south, the Jim Crow area, they said a black man couldn't look at a white woman because they would have got lynched. That's what I'm asking.
That's true, but now let me just say this. Fast forward to 2019. I'm at the Walmart 2 days a week over in St. Lucie West.
Yeah.
And honest to God, I have seen every combination of people you could possibly think of. I've seen white guys with black girls. I've seen black guys with white girls. I've seen Spanish girls with black guys. White guys with Spanish. I mean, everything. Every combination you could think of, I've seen over there. So that says a lot about where we are today. But I would also say that's probably even more prevalent in Port St. Lucie than it is even in Fort Pierce. I think so. I don't know, Cliff. Maybe you feel differently, but I mean, in Fort Pierce.
Port St. Lucie seems to be a whole lot more ease about things like that. But then I've known mixed families for as long as I've been here because I got a son-in-law who has a completely black cousins because his mom and her sister both were beautiful white blonde girls, and one of them had married a black guy, and the babies they had as they grew up and matured are some of the most beautiful people I've ever seen. Now, you look at in South America, people that are mixed Latino and white, the mixtures and out of the Latin countries, they're the most amazing, beautiful people you've ever seen. I'd say let's darken America. Let's darken the whole world, because I think we're all going to end up looking somewhat like the Egyptians did at one time.
Well, now you got some guys that are getting upset with you right now for saying that, Cliff. I mean that.
Well, I don't have a problem with it. I got family. I got some beautiful little brown daughters. I'm sorry, grandchildren from stepdaughters.
Hey, my granddaughter, and I am completely prejudiced. My granddaughter is as beautiful can get.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I don't think any ugly baby girls were ever created. They're all beautiful at first.
Yeah.
Then life sets
We'll
in.
be talking, Rudy.
Okay, Winnie,
Hey,
thanks.
Winnie.
My friend Winnie, she always calls. She's a loyal supporter.
But we were right about Jay. He knew about that green book.
Yeah, I knew Jay knew. I knew Jay would know
See,
about it.
I had somebody ask me one time and says, "You're on the African-American scene with Rudy, right?" "Yeah." "You're a white guy, right?" "Yes, I am." Contrary to some social networks that say I'm an African-American. But, although I work in here, and I do the show with Rudy, this person also noticed that a lot of the callers were white people. Why do white people call the show? And the answer to that is really simple, because folks are learning stuff on this show.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you don't need to preach to a choir. You don't need to tell black people the plight of black people. They know. They know from experience, especially the older ones. They know from experience. And I've heard it said before, well, you can't possibly know what it's like to be a black man living in the USA today. That's absolutely correct. I do not have any idea, but I've seen it. I've seen what goes on.
And you learn and you listen. You are a willing listener. And listen, I have done this show for all the time that I've done it just to enlighten folks.
Yeah.
To give them a different perspective, a different way to look at things. And, hopefully I can inject some thought processes in them that make them just re-examine some of their own personal prejudice and thinking. That's all. That's all I want you to do. I want to
not
be able
trying to inflict any guilt. If guilt occurs, there's a reason for it. Deal with it.
Yeah, I don't even want you to necessarily agree with me, but
Right.
I want to make you think.
Agreement isn't necessary. Honesty is.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
But I still don't think Steve actually gets that about me.
Well, this show is going on YouTube. It'll be up there sometime tomorrow.
Yeah.
And people like Steve and others can just watch it repeatedly, and you watch it 10 times. Watch it 3 times. How about that? You got time to watch this show 3 times. The archives will be up on YouTube, and maybe if you listen carefully, you might. You know what enlightenment is when you go into a dark room and you turn on the light and all the roaches scatter, because the light eliminates the darkness. That's what we mean by enlightenment. We enlighten you with facts about life that it's helpful for you to know. I mean, you'll feel better within yourself instead of being all bound up about it.
Listen, I just want to let you know, I won't be here next Wednesday. I have a meeting with my Humana people. They want to talk to us about some products and some other things that we got going coming up in the future. But I'll be back after that. So thank you for tuning in to the African American scene. God bless and be safe, and I will see you in 2 weeks right here for the African American scene.
We might even play back this show next week. That's a great idea. Great audience participation. Great job, audience. Wonderful. We love you. This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast, celebrating 25 years and counting. And Rudy right along with us almost all of those years, pretty much. Stick around. We got all your favorite evening programming coming up. And remember, just say, hey, Google, play WPSL on TuneIn. Or say, hey, Alexa, play WPSL. Because on Wednesday nights in the 6 o'clock hour, it's the African American scene right here.